and a very warm welcome to you for our If YouTube live stream event in support of Enough Food for Everyone, IF campaign. It's great that you're with us this evening. Thank you very much. Now, food is a crucial issue over the next few days. We are only 10 days away from the G8 summit in Northern Ireland and just 14 hours away from the start of a crucial meeting of world leaders on hunger and nutrition here in London. On top of that, tomorrow, we have the big IF rally in London's Hyde Park. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by such an amazing group of individuals from literally across the globe, all united by the fact that they're working to ensure that everyone in the world has enough food. Now, we're very excited to have the one and only Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with us today. If anyone knows how we can use technology and innovation to help us change the world for good, it certainly is Bill Gates. Thank you very much indeed for coming over, Bill. We're also joined by YouTuber Charlie is so cool-like, who's proved himself well-like cool by championing the #IfYouTube campaign with his YouTubing and campaigning with his mum Lindsay, who's also on our sofa. Hello to you both.
Hello.
And last but definitely not least, we have two campaigners who've come all the way from Tanzania to be with us. Meet Mwajuma, who's a young reporter and campaigner from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. You're very welcome, Mwajuma.
Thank you.
And there's also Mr. Frank. Now, if you've seen Charlie's videos of his trip around Tanzania with the IF campaign, you'll know Frank already. So, Frank, it's great to see you. Mr. Charlie and Mr. Frank have now happily been reunited and they're ready to take on the next stage of their campaign. But we also want to hear from you. Have you got a question that you'd like Bill Gates to answer, or a question indeed for any of our panellists? Please do get in touch. Send us a tweet using the #IfYouTube and #AskBillG. Now, some of you have already sent in video questions, so we'll be coming to those questions a little bit later on. So please do tweet us while we're on air with you this afternoon. So let's get cracking, shall we, with the questions. And let's talk about malnutrition, because that's why we're here. Starting, of course, with Bill. Bill, you've travelled around the world with your foundation, haven't you? How much of a problem do you see hunger and malnutrition is?
Well, it's a huge problem, because if you don't get enough to eat, the chance that you'll die from diseases like diarrhea or pneumonia is 10 times higher. Also, particularly in your first 2 years, if you don't have enough to eat, your brain is not going to develop as fully as it would otherwise. And so that means that even if you do survive, that your ability to help yourself achieve 100% of your potential and help your country lift itself out of poverty is diminished. And so as we improve feeding, as we get the right nutrition to these kids, they will be more and more self-sufficient.
The example that you've set for all of us and the dedication and commitment that both you and Melinda have shown through many years of campaigning and travelling is really quite extraordinary. But there must be so many individual stories that stick in your mind. Have you got a couple that you could share with us of people, of children that you've met who've really spurred you on to keep giving and campaigning in the way that you do?
Well, the first thing is you go out and you see the need. You see kids who don't have malaria bed nets, or are sick and even dying of the disease. You see areas where there's not enough food, so you just need to get food aid in. You see areas where people are so poor that their diet is so narrow that doesn't let them develop the right way. And just meeting one individual kid is, in some ways, more impactful than even hearing about millions. But we have to take kind of our heart of what we see and our head in terms of how broad these problems are and how we can use generosity to solve them. So it's a mix. I get to Africa several times a year and get out and see what's working and not. And so the progress is also uplifting, that if you go back to a place and you saw how many kids were dying, then you go back, you can meet and talk to them about what's changed. So we are making good progress.
That's great. Frank, you are our superstar with us today. You've flown all the way from Tanzania. You're at the other end, aren't you? You've experienced malnutrition. You know what it feels like not to have enough food with your family and you. Can you tell us what that feels like?
Thank you very much. I was still young
little young, I was experienced the hunger. I live sometimes I live grandmother's. Grandmother, she went to hospital to check up malnutrition disease. So sometimes I did not go to school. I did not to participate in other children. I did not to participate with all activity like sport. So hunger is a very, very problem in my life.
Frank, when you were going to bed without any food, did you know that around the world there was enough food and that it just wasn't reaching your family? How did that feel?
My family is very, very I'm gay. It's don't get enough food. So my family it does not get enough food. So because that get few food in Dar es Salaam. So hunger is very, very problem with my life.
Very
and
difficult for
yes,
you.
yes.
Lindsay, you've been campaigning along with Charlie So Cool Like for this. Yeah. Is that what you have to call him at home?
No, I
So
call
Cool
him
Like.
Charlie, actually.
Tell us how you've been campaigning.
Well, being involved in the If You Tube, it's getting the message across because people don't realise, that 1 in 8 people go to bed hungry. They don't know this, and it's getting this message across. Also, you know, it's staggering, 3 million children die every year from hunger. And it's just awful to think. I mean, in this world, there's enough food for everyone, and it shouldn't be happening. And you know, it's getting people involved in this campaign and saying, no, we will not stand for this, because governments need to do something about it. It shouldn't be happening.
Mwajuma, we're going to talk to you in a minute. Charlie, we're going to ask you a couple of questions now, but before that, let's have a quick look at your trip when you met Frank.
So first I met a guy called Frank Kapeta at his home here in Dar es Salaam, along with his little brother and his father, William. Basically, I was thrown into a world that is utterly different to what I'm used to at home, and spent the first day feeling a little bit shell-shocked. Frank is a pretty inspiring guy. He's 15, he's the young ambassador for Save the Children here, and when he was younger, he was one of those starving kids in Africa that we hear so much about. To be more specific, Frank used to suffer from malnutrition, so he did have a little bit of food, enough to survive, but not enough to grow up healthily. As a result, his growth was stunted, and so he's much smaller than he should really be at his age. And although he seemed to me to be a very intelligent guy, malnutrition also affected his brain growth, so he could have been even smarter than he currently is. The issues of hunger and malnutrition are, by the way, the reason that I'm here. Save the Children invited me to come along to support the IF campaign, which aims to make this year the beginning of the end for world hunger.
And it certainly should be the beginning of the end of hunger. That was a really big trip for you in your life, wasn't it? A really a bit of a game changer for you.
Yeah, it was, I think nothing really compares to, like, living in a world where, like, in a first world country and getting so used to hearing so much about, like I said in the video, like, starving kids in Africa and not really be able to, like, have the right context behind that. Like, seeing it in person just sort of, it really humanized the whole issue for me. Being able to meet people like Frank and actually getting a chance to make friends with the people who like have these issues in their lives, like it just made everything very real. And I think for me the thing that struck me most was just the sort of the case of like lost potential, I guess. Like you said, I think it's like the first 1,000 days from just like from conception, so not even like. Not even you're born, and like even at the point of mothers getting enough food while they still have the kids, while they're still just it was definitely a case of I hate like being in situations where you see you see people and you know that life could just be that little bit easier for them if they were able to just have had that extra bit of nutrition when they were younger, to get that bit of extra just brain development, and knowing that they wouldn't have that sort of like wall in the way.
That's a really important point that Charlie's saying, Bill, isn't it? It's not just about having enough food, but it's about the terrible effects that has for a lifetime.
Yeah, I think people are waking up to this, that hunger's not just bad for the period that you experience hunger, it's bad for the entire rest of your life. Now we are making progress on this, and so we can actually talk about can we bring it to an end, and people are rallying around. It's great to see.
It certainly is a life sentence, all the research shows, doesn't it, that the development has long-term effects, as you said. But it must be extremely frustrating for you because you can see a solution, you know that there is a solution, you know that there's enough food for everyone, you've campaigned tirelessly for years, and somehow it's just making it happen. How optimistic are you that people are going to sit up and listen and make this a thing of the past?
Well, people should understand that the generosity of the rich countries really is making a difference. We've gone in my lifetime from where 25% of all children died below the age of 5 to now it's below 6%. And we've recognized that getting vaccines out and solving these hunger problems are key to get that 6% down to 3% and eventually even down to 0. So we can do this country by country. We're seeing the improvement.
How optimistic are you? How much progress do you think we've made already?
Well, I've decided to put all my money into this and all my time into this. So obviously I feel like it's the most important thing in the world, and it's going to be hugely impactful to really have justice on a global basis.
Mwajuma, as a young journalist, how important do you feel this event is?
It is really important for sure, because I think it is a time for us to tell world leaders, people, powerful people like Mr. Bill, to invest in food, because I know how hunger feels like. Yeah, it happened to me. I experienced it.
We're going to ask each other questions in a minute, because I know you've all arrived with some questions for each other, which makes my life a bit easier, which is great. So thank you very much. But just a quick reminder that there are an awful lot of people that are getting in touch with us already, and we are going to be taking your questions a little bit later on and addressing them to the panel. So please keep them coming using the hashtag #IfYouTube and hashtag #AskBillG. So far we've got questions coming in from all over the place. Susan Beckett, from Judith, from Isabel, and we'll be coming to you in a moment's time. But let's just ask each other questions now. Mwajuma, I know that you've got a question for Bill specifically. Would you like to kick us off?
Okay. Mr. Bill, I'm so sad to see children, innocent children, die from hunger, from malnutrition. So I really want to get attention from leaders and from powerful people to make a better future for ourselves. So I really want your advice. What will be the best way to do this?
Okay, so how do you raise the profile of this issue?
Well, part of the challenge is distance. If the people had these hunger problems lived next door to you, you'd go and you'd reach out and there is enough food. And so how do we span that distance? Well, part of it is we need more people to visit because being on the ground like Charlie was, that's very, very powerful. Absolutely. But we also need to be innovative about how we take the digital connection and try and bridge that distance so that you can see somebody that you can relate to and say, okay, that could be me. Why I was lucky to be born in a rich country, but we're all one humanity. And so, for so little money, the food can be made available. So I think it's a challenge to your generation to take the innovative ways that the new tools are being used and reach this awareness that overcomes distance.
So you're saying it's not necessarily just world leaders, but it's just about spreading messages within your own community and your group? Yeah,
the leaders, they can help, but the voters are going to decide the priorities. Countries like the UK have kept aid as a priority even in tough budget times, but they're only allowed to do that if the grassroots is really speaking out about that they care. If they've got the endorsement. That's a brilliant question, Mwajuma. Thank you very much. Mr. Frank.
Okay.
Your turn.
No.
What are you going to ask?
Mr. Great Gates, I work hard here to try and building a successful career so I can build in a better life for myself and my family. How did you set up about building your own career and business?
Well, I think if you're lucky, you find something that you're passionate about and that meets a real need. And for a lot of people, you first invest in yourself in terms of education as much as possible. Learning from school, learning from adults, learning what needs in the community aren't being met. And then eventually you have to take the risk and dive in. You know, pick the kind of job you want to do, hope that your talents really are matched to that. You know, sometimes risk-taking, believing in yourself is a big part of that. But, you know, if you've got the right background, it is a time of opportunity.
I haven't known you very long, but I think you're going to be very successful. I don't think you need to worry. I think we need to worry about you. What about you, Bill? Do you have questions for the rest of the panel?
Well, I'm very interested in how you think we should draw young people in to these issues. I think it's very powerful to have the young speaking on behalf of the young, and yet we don't do that much. Do you have thoughts on what we should do differently?
I guess, Charlie, that's a real question for you to answer. You've got so many followers, haven't you? Like 2 million.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely the case that I think people like to listen to people that they can identify with, that they can relate to. And so having sort of the asset of YouTube has been very important to me from the start, that I wanted to be able to do something with my platform to communicate about issues like this one. But I think even if, even sort of like regardless of like what age you are, I think my experience making videos on YouTube is just, I think people like normal, real people. They're like just sort of open and honest people. And they care a lot about people who just have a passion for something. I find that I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, things that I don't have a passion for myself, but I find it just incredibly engaging to see people who care about specific issues. And so I think if you have a passion and you just talk openly and honestly about what that is, people will find it interesting so long as you find it interesting yourself.
There aren't going to be many times in your life where Bill Gates asks you a question, are there? So, would anybody else like to answer that question? Mwajuma, have you got an answer?
Yes.
Have you got an answer to what Bill Gates was saying is, how can you empower your community as a young person?
For me, I'm one of young reporter in Tanzania. I'm the member. So through media, I promise, I know I will work hard and I'll be successful. Yeah.
Very good. Have you got another question at all that you'd like to ask, or I can move on?
Go ahead.
Okay, let me move on. Charlie and Lindsay, you've got a question, have you? Okay, who's going to go first?
Charlie,
go on then, Charlie.
Okay,
you go first.
Yeah, sure. For you, I know one of the things that the Gates Foundation does is give money to charities like Save the Children to spend on trips like the one that me and my mum went on. I know that's important, so I was wondering just why that is a focus of the Gates Foundation, why you think that's so important.
Well, we know for ourselves that our commitment to these causes and our belief in these causes came from actually being in Africa and seeing how beautiful and wonderful it is, and yet how different it is in terms of the things that we take for granted. And so we've even given politicians, senators from the United States, a chance to go out and see these things. And I remember one senator was asking a woman who'd gotten better seeds to grow a little bit more in the way of crops, what she was going to do with that little bit of extra money. And, you know, the senator was looking around and saying, you don't have a TV set, no car, no electricity. You know, which of those things are you going to prioritize? And she said, no, I'm going to send my kid to school. I won't need them as much on the farm working. There's some school fees, getting the uniform. And that's my priority, so my kids grow up in a different way. And you know, it was just so real because nobody had asked her that before, and yet it's exactly why we all work on these issues.
And if I might answer that question a little bit as well, going to the field and seeing the work that you know, people like Save the Children do, organisations like Save the Children, you see the impact that it makes. And as you know, it inspires you to do even more, because you know that small changes make massive difference to people's lives. And it's so crucial that we all take responsibility for that. Lindsay, your question.
Oh yes, I just wanted to say I'm a primary school teacher, and we really do a lot of work at my school with charity. And I just wondered how important you think that is in terms of educating young people. I teach children aged 9 to 11 mostly, and they have been absolutely fascinated by what I've been doing because they've seen, you know, films of me in Africa. But how important do you think that is in terms of education?
Well, it's been interesting as I've met different philanthropists around the world to ask them why they're involved, and almost all of them go back and talk about their parents setting an example and talking to them, or their school involving them in something at the time they may have thought, yeah, why do we have to do this? Well, what is this thing? Is this real? I can't at first relate to it, but it sort of instills in them a sense that that's one of the privileges and responsibility of success is giving back. And at a young age, that'll often take the form of volunteering, taking their time, helping out. A lot of it at first will be charities in the local area, and there's, you know, that is fantastic as well. Although the need is far away, there are needs locally, and so that's where you get going on charities, often in the community.
I would just say, Charlie, I have so much respect for you that you're actually going out and doing something about it. You could be sitting at home playing video games, but actually that you've done something amazing. But I guess there's an interesting link, as if Bill were in his youth again, would you be a YouTuber like Charlie has been?
Well, I'd certainly be talking about software, because that was my, you know, fanatic belief. And so, no, I envy kids growing up today, because these tools that let you see what's going around the world, you know, learn things. When I was curious and asked questions, it wasn't easy to get answers. And now, whether it's Wikipedia or YouTube or so many of the great tools, kids can learn. And it'll be fascinating to see what they do with this empowerment.
Absolutely. Now listen, empowering, we've got loads and loads of questions that are flashing all over my screen, but we've actually also had some video messages, particularly for you, some questions for you, Bill Gates. Let's start off with Tomek.
Hi, my name is Tomek. Question for Mr. Gates. What words of wisdom can you offer the young people out there who are having a tough time finding work or even deciding what to do with their lives?
Okay, quite a broad question.
Yeah, it's like Frank and I were discussing. It's the primary thing you do is you invest in your own education. And you know, if there's a time when it's hard to find a job, maybe you should go out and get more skills. You know, learn to be a nurse or a doctor or something that. There are professions in very high demand. You know, in the whole IT area, there's actually a shortage of people worldwide, and that's really ironic that you have people who don't have jobs, and yet if they can get the training, there's an incredible need for what they do. You do have to love the work you do, because no matter what it pays, you're going to spend most of your life doing those things, and so if you find that early on, it's a lucky thing. And
especially if you can then have a slant where you're actually doing good with it as well. I guess that would be a nice end to that question. Tomek, I hope that answers your question. This is a tweet that's come in from Oliver to Lindsay. What was the moment that inspired you to get involved with IF?
Oh, as soon as Save the Children asked me, I was just inspired straight away. I mean, I was very fortunate because I travelled to Mozambique with Save the Children with the vaccines ahead of the vaccine summit a couple of years ago, and that was just an amazing experience. And so I didn't have to, I had it just straight away. I had to.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to take another video question now, and this is from Chris.
Hello Mr. Gates, my name is Chris Lauder, and my question is, what form of aid do you feel will be most beneficial and long-lasting when tackling hunger in the most deprived areas, and how would governments go about distributing this aid?
Well, Chris, thank you very much indeed for that question. A very good question. What's the best form of aid?
Well, aid in this area take several forms. Of course, if there's a famine, you've got to get the food in so that the kids can survive. But then you also want to create a long-term solution. Just constantly coming in from food from overseas isn't letting the farmers in that area have a living. And over 70% of the poor people and people who don't have enough feed are farmers. They've got small plots of land. And so actually inventing seeds that are more productive and teaching the farmer how to use those seeds that can do well even if there's not enough water, drought resistance, or seeds that can deal with flooding or other weather problems that are probably going to get worse in the future. And so fortunately, scientists are coming up with these things when we give them support. And so we can expect agricultural productivity in Africa to more than double as we get all the innovations out into the field.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much indeed for that question. A very good question indeed. Rosie's question now, again, for you, Mr. Gates.
Hi, Bill. You're a very inspiring guy. I'm just wondering, who inspires you?
Who is your inspiration?
Well, I was inspired by my parents, who were very philanthropic. I'm inspired by Warren Buffett, who's giving all his money away. And even that idea of how important that was, I really learned that from him early on. I'm inspired by people who give, who are actually making a sacrifice. I mean, in my case, even though I'm going to give 98% of the money away, you know, I still, in terms of food, vacation, I'm not denying myself some important thing. A lot of people who give are actually saying, okay, I'll give and not take a vacation. And perhaps in the highest category are the people who go live in Africa and really devote their life. Yeah, the workers, you know, people like Paul Farmer and many whose names we don't know, who get out there on the front line and actually get involved. And it's inspiring to know that some people take it to that length.
In turn, you have then inspired generations and millions of people. So thank you very much indeed, because without you and Melinda, a lot of stuff would not have been able to happen. So thank you. Jasmine has texted, or tweeted rather, I'm sorry, I'm not cool like you. Charlie, how do you plan to continue working to help charities in the future? There you go, you're on a track now, you can't get off.
I think it's just a case of the whole idea of going on this trip in the first place was, it came from Save the Children. It was actually Mum, I think they contacted you the first time, and so I just got a phone call from my mum saying, do you want to go to Africa? And so it has been a case of just, it's just taking the opportunities when they come up. Like I have a big focus on my own job, making videos and things like that, and so it's just about I guess dedicating the time to it when it comes up, and just making sure that you for me, it's just being aware of the fact that it's a lot more important than some of the stuff I'm doing in my life, I guess.
Absolutely, and Bill says you've got power and responsibility now, and a lot of followers, so hopefully we'll see you on lots more Save the Children trips. Right, we have another quick video question from Dodie. Thank you very much, Dodie.
Hello, my question is, what do you think is the main thing we can do to end world hunger?
Well, that's the biggest question of all time. What can we do to end world hunger?
Well, the rich countries can step up and be more generous. And the event tomorrow, where a lot of world leaders are gathered, and people are going to come out in the afternoon to Hyde Park, I think at 3:30, and show their support for this thing. This is going to be a big milestone. We're going to see some generosity. We're going to talk about the effective problems, and then we'll be measuring that. The goal is that by the Olympics down in Brazil, that there would have been big progress on this. It does take the countries we're working with to also make agricultural a priority, and so that's been done. It takes scientists to come in and get involved in these things. We're on a pretty good track. But now we need to rededicate ourselves.
But very importantly, it is possible.
It absolutely is possible. That's this whole if thing. If you have this as a dream, then it becomes pretty clear that with some sacrifice, with some priorities, this is something that can end.
Mwajuma, a last question to you about ending world hunger. What can we do to help? You live in Tanzania. What do you ask all of us to do to help?
The thing which I ask you, all of you, is to participate, to cooperate, to take it serious, to make decision and take action.
Very powerful words, and we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that is all we have time for today. If you want to get involved, to come down to Hyde Park tomorrow for the Big If rally, it's from 2 to 5 p.m. We will all be there. Hopefully you can join us. And if you can't make it in person tomorrow, you can still virtually show your face. Visit www.enoughfoodif/show your face to submit a picture. Those pictures are going to be shown on the big screens at Hyde Park tomorrow. So if we don't see you in person, we hope to see you virtually. Thank you very much indeed to everybody for sitting on this panel and having such an interesting and productive and positive discussion. We've got to make it work. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you again soon.